teacher-student relationship is, is that of a customer and, customer and service provider, or do you think that
Wow.
relationship is like something deeper?
Um,
So that's like, I had to think about that one for a while.
so I just had a conversation with my wife this morning about this kind of stuff. All right. So think about this and how much different jujitsu is from other forms of martial arts. So in jujitsu, especially for people that are affiliates, why are you affiliating with a particular instructor or team or whatever? Why? Is it for technical guidance? Is it for coaching? You hope so. That's what it should be for. And then there's a transaction involved. There's a monetary transaction involved. In order for you to be a part of this association or team or with this particular coach professor, you have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So when there is a financial transaction that occurs, what is it that you are ultimately wanting to get back? Well, and you know this too, especially with how jujitsu used to be years ago. If you had, only a single black belt and like a small portion of, or excuse me, a state that doesn't have a lot of jujitsu in it,
Mm-hmm.
well, you are going to be paying for, part of what you're paying for is the opportunity to be promoted by somebody. The what does the professor want from the student? That was a dramatic pause on purpose. Is it money? I mean, like what is the motivation for the relationship behind them? So for me, and if you know a little bit about my history and some of the changes that I've made along the line, is I always wanted somebody that was going to be just as loyal to me as I was willing to be to them. And it was very important. This is how I look at the black belt, like an aspect of the black belt is I wanted someone to be honored to give me my belt, and that they were is that not only did they assume that I was legitimate, but that I knew that they were as legitimate as well, because maybe they didn't promote, or all of their black belts are totally legit, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So jiu-jitsu is different in regard to other forms of martial arts with the with the tuition that is involved. If you think about like how many, I don't know anybody that does taekwondo anymore. I don't know anybody, but I do know it, like the one person that I think that does taekwondo. I don't know how frequently this individual does taekwondo, but I think that their gym membership's like $35.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But jiu-jitsu, if you like a city, especially in a lot of jiu-jitsu, it's expensive. It's
Can you
really,
say
really
that?
expensive.
Can you say that one more time? Because I kind of lost you for a little bit.
If you go to a big city that doesn't have a lot of jiu-jitsu is very expensive.
Yeah.
I think that, and I'm taking a long time to answer your question, but I do think that you have individuals, and tell me if I answer it, if I'm staying on track. You have individuals, I do think that because they are paying, that there is an expectation that, especially when they see other people and they cross compare and they see other people that, oh, he came in around the same time as I did.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he getting promoted and I'm not? I think there is a level of expectation based on the financial piece that comes with getting promoted.
Yeah, personally, in my own life, I've had personal experience where, maybe, someone owned an academy or something, and they're like, well, I'm paying this guy, I own this guy. Like, that's how they, from an
Yeah,
instructor's perspective, teaching at
right.
someone else's academy. Like, I've had like those kind of conversations where, like, because they're paying you, they're like, well, you should do what I say because I'm paying you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Hey, say that question again, Alec. I want to know, tell me your question again.
So is the teacher-student relationship, is it like a customer and a service provider, or is it
That's
something
right.
deeper?
Yeah. So I think that the relationship between a student and a teacher is deeper than a customer and a business owner. I really do. And At the same time, though, there is that business side of it. But I see that a little bit more affecting the guys that have affiliations with this head instructor, not so much between a business owner and a student, or a professor or a coach and a student. That's just my opinion, or at least I feel like that's been more my experience.
I think this question came about from the last video, because a lot of students were, they were like, well, I'm paying him, so I can ask him about when I'm getting my belt.
Yeah,
like,
right.
So a lot of people were, that's a big talking point a lot of those guys had. So that's why I kind of wanted to pick your brain on that one.
So there's a difference between an individual that asks their coach for technical feedback. Hey, do you feel like I'm on the right path here? Or when I do this, do you feel like it's effective, especially when we train? Or do I need to stop doing this? Or is there an aspect of my game you think that I'm neglecting? Those questions are totally fine. As soon as you ask about a belt, but again, I'm motivated for different reasons in how I run my business. I'm totally motivated differently. And I mentioned this in the last video, but I've had a couple of students that have definitely left me because I didn't promote them. I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. And the only thing that made it a little bit more dramatic for them is they assumed that we were friends as well. When I might be friendly with them, but I'm not really, I may get blasted for this. I don't really consider myself friends with many of them. You know what I'm saying? But I'm definitely friendly. I want to be their teacher. And I don't want there to be any confusion in that regard.
I think it's important to have those healthy boundaries, because you're their instructor, but also you're your own person. You have your family, you have your own life outside of jiu-jitsu. So I think it's important to have that boundary.
For sure. But Alec, I want to tell you something, and this, I coached collegiately and I also taught at a university. And I remember thinking about this one time during a department meeting, and we had somebody come in from it was like student services or something. It was one of the VPs, and then they also came in with somebody from the bursar's office, and they kept referring to students. It was really confusing. And I remember one of the professors asked a question about that, and they said, "You keep referring to these individuals as customers. We're talking about students." And
wait, you were saying students, or they were saying customers?
The VP, the administration, was saying customers, and then another professor said he was legitimately confused, and he said, "Do you mean students?" And he said, "Absolutely." He said, "These are customers. This is a customer service oriented business." And I was like, wow, okay, there's a problem with that, because education isn't a product. And so I go back to the question that you asked, which is a really good question, and I hope it actually helps some people, is people are paying for jiu-jitsu instruction. I don't feel like jiu-jitsu, even though there's a financial transaction involved, I don't think that jiu-jitsu isn't a product. And I really believe too, as cheesy as it may sound, I believe it is a lifestyle. And the different things that I've learned from jiu-jitsu relative to my character, in attributes. I'm talking about like personal attributes like humility and confidence and that kind of thing. And so if that were the case, and this is also how I look at it, I know I charge more for jiu-jitsu in Savannah than any other school in this area, but I'll look at it like this: you can't really put a price tag on the things that you get from jiu-jitsu. If it's all about like the belt or just learning a move, then I guess that you can arguably put a price tag on that, but you can't. So I feel like my value, and again, I'm comfortable with comments in the YouTube section, or in the comment section of the YouTube video, and I'm also comfortable with them on Instagram. But if that were the case, I feel like I should be getting paid $1,000 a month per student. And it's not so much what that has to do for me is how open-minded or how that's less about me than the environment that's created. And I'm not just a part of that. All the other students are a part of that too. You know, I mean, like, I really do feel like what you guys had in Atlanta, based on what I think that I know about where you came from and the guys that I know that you trained with when you were a colored belt, and all of those guys are still training now that come to mind for the most part. No, I mean, I can't even imagine the environment, and probably you are who you are today because of the people that were around you too, not just Chakray or Lucas or Cabrinha, but also because of your teammates. And I mean, how can you put a price tag on that? That's just me.
Now my bigger